Hello everyone, and welcome to our first doctoral seminar for this fall featuring Andrew LaFave. Andrew is a full-time PhD student in K-12 Urban Education Policy at the USC Rossier School of Education. His current research focuses on the schools as organizations and the power dynamics that exist between and among administrators, teachers, and students. This is the first time Andrew is presenting at our doctoral web seminars. We look forward to hearing his insights on academic writing later this evening. I am one of the moderators tonight, Sherry Lee. I'm currently a lecturer at Temasek Polytechnic in Singapore, but come December, I'll be studying on my PhD program in New Zealand. Also, I would like to introduce Dr. Peggy Elvis, Professor of Language and Literacy Education at the College of Education at Georgia State University. She is the founder of Global Conversations in Doctoral Preparation, as well as Global Conversations in Literacy Research. The Global Conversations in Doctoral Preparation, or GCDP, are mentoring web seminars that are designed by doctoral students for doctoral students. These seminars offer different perspectives on various topics related to the doctoral education experience. We are very excited to have doctoral candidates like Andrew from the University of Southern California, and next month, Dr. Raul A. Mora from Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana to share their experiences with us. We welcome doctoral students from across the country as well as internationally to present these web seminars. We hope that these seminars will be extended into global conversations around doctoral preparation so that we can learn from and with each other. These doctoral web seminars cover a range of topics. They can be research-based so that we can present research, or we can present on some aspects of the doctoral program, or in mentoring ourselves into the academy. Tonight's presentation by Andrew, Scrivener, Process, and Finding Out in Academic Writing is one such mentoring session that will guide us in our academic writing. Today we are using Blackboard Collaborate, and I hope you will become familiar with the tools. Feel free to chat and ask Andrew by typing in the chat box. Our moderators will be collecting the questions as we proceed with the seminar. Right now, it would be great if you could share with us which part of the world you are joining us from. You will see a toolbar on your left where you can click on the star and drag it to place it on a map. Or if you like, you can type it in the chat box. Great, it's so wonderful to see so many of you from everywhere. It is now my pleasure to present Andrew LaFave tonight. Andrew is a full-time PhD student in K-12 Urban Education Policy at the USC Rossier School of Education. His current research focuses on the schools as organizations and the power dynamics that exist between and among administrators, teachers, and students. Later in November this year, Andrew will be hosting a caucus on the intersection of healthcare and education policy at the Fall Research Conference of the Association for Public Policy Analysis and Management in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This evening, Andrew will be sharing his experience in using an all-in-one research and writing application called Scrivener. He will also provide us with some tools and strategies for improving the quality of our writing straight away. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce Andrew, who will speak on Scrivener, Process, and Finding Art in Academic Writing. Andrew, you are on.
Thank you very much. And good evening, everybody. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for joining me, and thank you especially to Cherie and all the other people at GCDP for inviting me to be a part of this really great series. Tonight, as you just heard, I'm going to be talking about a program called Scrivener, and just giving some thoughts on process and some ways to be a little bit more artful in the way that we approach academic writing, because I think there's a lot of dull work out there, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think those of us who are entering the profession now, entering the academy now as PhD students or early career faculty, really have an opportunity to put some better writing out into the world, which makes everyone, I think, a little bit happier about what they have to do when they have to read stuff. So that's what we'll be talking about tonight. And just by way of a roadmap here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Then I'm going to talk about getting organized and give some strategies for that. I'm going to talk about this program called Scrivener, and then I'm going to end up with just some thoughts on how to make art in writing, because as I said, it used to be true. Academic writing used to be great writing, and then somewhere we lost our way, and I think we can find it again if we try and we're a little bit purposeful about it. So actually, I just had an excellent introduction, so I'm not sure how much more I need to repeat about that, but I am a third-year full-time PhD student at the University of Southern California's Rossier School of Education. I study urban education policy, and privatization and power are where I'm going right now. That's what my research centers on. But when I was a kid, I did a lot of writing, a lot of writing. I was one of those kids who was writing books. I wrote a novel when I was in fourth grade. It wasn't a very long novel, but it was a novel. And I thought it was pretty great. So I've been writing for a really long time, and writing is something that I really care about and that I'm really passionate about. And hopefully that'll kind of come through for everybody here tonight. And also, before we go on too much further here, there's going to be some spots to pause for questions as we're going through kind of at the end of each section. So if you have any questions, do please let us know, and I'll try to answer them kind of as we go along. Before I came back to school, I was a high school band director for 5 years, and so I'm used to being interrupted with questions. So if you have them, please ask them. I think it'll make it better for everybody. Okay. So when we start off here, we're talking about process, the process of writing, which is something that I think gets a little bit of a bum rap. I think because of the way that it gets taught to a lot of us when we're in school, at least in the United States, as this sort of thing like you have to do it, you must do it this way, there should be this many drafts, and that's not necessarily true. It can be true, that can be one way to do it, but as far as I'm concerned, the idea of process writing should just be that you find a process that works for you, and whatever that process is a process. So I say the best way is your way. Whatever you've been doing, if you find something that works, there's no reason to change it, unless you find that it's not working as well as you think it should or as well as you want, and kind of going along with it is that it doesn't have to be the same way every time. I think the more disciplined we can be when we write, the better the ultimate product will be. But if it's just being disciplined, if it's the process and not necessarily the steps that you take every time, then that also, again, it's a process. So the one that works for you is the one that's most important. So I'm gonna give some options tonight, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about some things that I found have worked really well for me, and for some other people that I've worked with when I work with writing with some of my colleagues. But the main thing is just to be thinking about yourself and about what works for you, and what conditions you have to set so that you can be a successful writer. So, and I think that, I do think, though, that the more concrete you can be, the easier the hard parts will be. So those hard parts are the things that we get stuck on. Maybe it's easy to write a first paragraph, but the second paragraph is less easier. It's easy to write an abstract, but it's hard to write an analysis, things like that. And the easy stuff, we don't need process for the easy stuff, because if it was all easy, we wouldn't need any process, right? So that's why I said it's easier the hard parts will be, but it's all hard parts. Okay, so, excuse me, it's hot here in California. So I think the most obvious one first, or the easiest one first, or the one that we get maybe are most familiar with first, is outlining. And outlining is something that I was always really not happy about having to do when I was in school, when I was in, like, high school particularly. Something I really didn't like to do, and I really didn't see that it was necessary. But I've become a believer since I started studying for my PhD. I really think outlines are great, and I think the reason they are great is because a good outline should make it easier to write. And the whole idea, I think, with creating a good outline is that it is sort of a framework that you can hang whatever you're writing off of. So the better your outline is, the easier it'll be to actually write the stuff. If you put the time into the outline, the paper kind of follows and kind of falls into place on its own. So what I have here on the slide is this is an outline for a piece that I was working on with my advisor and some other co-authors, and we put together, in kind of a collaborative way, we kind of put together a outline that was really less of an outline and more like a list. And you can kind of see here, it doesn't really matter what it's about, but you can just sort of see that it's all, the way that this looks doesn't lend itself to any kind of improved organization or just sort of improved much of anything. It's just a nice list, and since we were all collaborating together, everybody kind of had their own ideas, so it didn't necessarily pay to really tear it apart and make a better outline. But when it came time to write, and I did a lot of writing for this project, I wanted to change it from something that was like this, that really wasn't going to help me all that much, aside from just content-wise, to something that could actually help me, which is what we have here. So when I write outlines for myself, I go, capital Roman numerals to capital Roman letters, to lowercase Roman numerals, to lowercase Roman letters, to Arabic numerals, as you can kind of see slanting across the screen here. I'm not sure I've ever had to go beyond Arabic numerals. I don't know what I would do if I had to do that. But you can see that the point here really is just to take it from something that's, like a kind of a gush of information, sort of a fire hose, and focus it down to maybe a little bit more of a shower head, something like that. And the point here is that this creating, organizing the information that you have and that you want to write about in a way that is visually easy to understand is going to really, I think, lubricate the writing process when you get there. So you start with big ideas. You go to sub-points on the big ideas. You go to supporting points for the sub-points. And you can get really intense about this. I worked with another faculty collaborator during my first couple of years in my program, and he liked to write full sentences in his outlines. And his idea was that just over time, the outline would grow into the paper, and it would all just be one kind of big living document, which is something that I'd never seen before. I'd never heard of that before. It didn't end up working so great for me, just because I like to have multiple documents that I can kind of go back and check with, because I'm kind of concrete when it comes to writing. But it worked great for him, and I've known a lot of people that it works great for too. So again, there it is, right? You just got to find the thing that works for you. And if it, he called that sentence outlining. You can Google that and see some stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there. It turns out it's a it's a very well-known technique, but I hadn't seen it before I got to working with him. But anyway, but this is a good example of what, as far as I'm concerned, what an outline should look like, because it would be easy to move from this to a paper, easy to see what your points are going to be. So like I said, a good outline should make writing easy, because the part of the hard work that goes into making an outline is the same as the hard work that goes into writing a paper. So if you put a lot of time into the outline, it'll be a lot easier to move to the paper than if you just started with a blank sheet and tried to kind of keep it organized in your head. It'll make your paper organized, because that's what an outline is. That's the whole point of making an outline, right? Is that things will be better organized for you. And make your abstract better, because an outline is already an abstract. And this is something that I learned, again, from another one of the faculty members that I work with in my program. But she had this idea that a good abstract is basically all of the main points from the outline strung together in sentences. So that if you write a good enough outline, you actually don't have to write an abstract. You can just cut and paste those points and maybe add a capital letter and a period or something like that to make an abstract. And, I think sometimes it can be difficult to really distill the work that we've done into an abstract, because we're so close to it and we're so familiar with all the nuance, and it's so, we're just so close to it that I think it can be difficult to kind of, distill it down to whatever its core is. And if you write a good outline, you've already done that before you got so intimate with everything while you were writing it. So, okay. So now we're gonna switch from outlines to maps, and I think here is where we were going to pause for some questions. I don't know if anybody has any questions yet about outlining at all.
Andrew, thank you so much for your information on outlines. I can see in the chat box that there was a lot of affirmation to how useful that would be. One question in regard to outlines is that we know that writing is not a linear process. It is certainly fluid, where we come back to things and it's almost spiral in nature. How do you use your outline in that regard? Do you go back and change it, or do you just continue writing, and as changes and reflections and revisions come into play, you just move through that within your piece?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I think I'm going to end up kind of addressing that a little bit later, because I think the nonlinear nature of this program, Scrivener, is one of its strengths and one of its main selling points, I think. But yes, I mean, certainly it's nonlinear, and I don't, when I talk about being concrete, I don't want to I don't want to mislead anybody into thinking that going from A to B to C is the right way to do it, because I think for a lot of us, and myself included, that's really not how it works. So I think revising an outline is a great way to do it if that's something that that you find useful. For myself, I try to put a lot of work in on an outline, and then when I'm writing, as things, well, no, actually, that's interesting. I never really thought of it that way. But yeah, as I'm writing, I sometimes will go back and add things into the outline to make sure that it still flows. I think it's worth noting that the idea of multiple drafts on anything as being sort of discrete, concrete, here's draft 1, here's draft 2, that sort of thing is kind of, I don't know, it seems almost kind of antiquated, because we all, if you go through all of the times that you rewrite a sentence in a paper, using whatever word processor you like to use, and you call that all drafts, there's probably, thousands of drafts that go into something that might actually get called draft 1, But I think, I think revising an outline is a great thing to do. And I think if that's, especially if you are somebody who likes to be able to look back, I think saving new versions of outlines as something that's, as like a separate document or something like that, so that you can go back and sort of see the way that you're thinking progress. That'll probably also help, when you get like a revise and resubmit later from a journal editor or whatever, and you can sort of see where your thinking went so that you can justify it to them.
Excellent. Thank you for that wonderful answer. And one other question just came through that looks like it would be very applicable to our discussion in outlines. How do you decide what is too much or too little? I think that's an issue that we all come across when we are writing. What do you do in that case?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think too little. Well, let me answer it this way. I commute on a train. I have about an hour and a half train commute every day when I go into school, and a lot of times when I make an outline, I'll do like a really fast version that's like, and I remember doing this when I learned, when I took like an SAT prep class too, that the whole idea was like make a fast outline in it, and that's like not enough, so if all it is just main points and maybe with like one subpoint or something like that, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that's enough. I think, and for me, like I said, I don't know, whoever asked, I don't know if they were there for the whole last section, but too much for me is like complete sentences. I think once an outline starts to look like a paper, then I try to pull back because I like to keep an outline and a paper separate. That's important for me. So I'd say that's too much because sentences are details, and details, real details, like granular, fine details, probably, as far as I'm concerned, don't really belong on an outline. Because then you're, but again, if it's an iterative process for you, if you just sort of like to blend from like, you keep expanding the outline, you keep refining the outline over time, the outline becomes the paper. If that's the way that you work, then, I don't think there's any way that it could be you couldn't be too detailed then, because then the outline would become the finished product, right? So I think it's all about finding what works for you. For me, that's too much. And then too little is like I couldn't write a paper by looking at it without thinking. There's sort of a sweet spot in there, I guess.
Excellent. And that goes right back to your initial point where you have to find a process that works for you, just like you stated. That sounds like it is reiterated in your thoughts about the outline also. So thank you very much for that question, answer to that question. So we will go ahead and let you move on to your next session of your PowerPoint.
Great. Okay. So outlining is one way that you can kind of get your thoughts down and get your ideas going for yourself. But the other one that I'm going to talk about here is maps. Maps are great because you can write them like on the back of a napkin if you get suddenly hit with something when you're at a place where you can't, be traditionally scholarly productive. I did just say scholarly. That's right. Wherever you are, you can just kind of make it happen and start to see the connections. And as you get more complete about these maps, they can become conceptual frameworks, which means that conceptual frameworks, a good conceptual framework, a complete conceptual framework that looks like a map can be a figure in a paper. And so this is a good example of something that doesn't have to be just something that's sort of behind the scenes and kind of something that you don't, that you make for yourself, but that nobody else ever sees. These frameworks can become something that can help readers who eventually interact with your finished product understand kind of what you're going for and what the relationships are between the things that you're talking about. And of course, the great thing about a map is that there's really no wrong way to make them. There's about as many right ways to make them as there are people in the world. So I have a map here that I'm going to show you in a second, but this map is from a website called bubble.us, bubbl.us, which is like I think it's like a Java type, like a Java animation kind of site that'll make maps for you. But there's way more than that, and this one's just one that I like. But if you Google them, if you're into this, you can find lots of free tools to do it, because this is really difficult to do in Word, really difficult to do in Word, and really easy to do on the web. So here is a map that I made. So this is for, I'm at a point in my program where I'm starting to think very carefully about specifically what my dissertation is going to be. And one of the things about my dissertation is that, as you can kind of see here, is that it's going to focus around this node right here. If I point to this, can you guys see this? The sun thing pointing at product R&D. Can you all see that at all? Does that make a difference? Yes. Okay. All right. Cool. Good. So you can see here this product R&D right here is going to be sort of the central idea of what my dissertation is going to be.
And so I just put this together for you guys just so you could kind of see the way that this works, and you can connect all different kinds of things to it. And if this was, you could go from this to an outline, or from an outline to this. It could go either way, or it could just be a separate thing too. But if this product R&D thing here in the middle is the core category, the subject of the paper or whatever, then these boxes that it's connected to here, these light green boxes, this government action, board behavior, market forces, those would be like your Roman numerals, your capital Roman numerals, and these other boxes here would be, capital letters. These light blue boxes here would be, lowercase Roman numerals, things like that. And I figured out, I feel silly saying this, I feel silly admitting this, but I just realized that if you do make an outline in Word, Word has tools that can just turn them into pictures for you too. So if you like to write words, but look at pictures, if you don't feel comfortable making your own pictures, Word will do this for you too. So that's just a kind of a hit thing. But
But if you just like to make your own pictures, this is a great way to do it, and you can kind of see the relationship between all these different things. And this is the sort of thing that an outline won't usually allow you to do, because as we were saying before, right, an outline is very linear. It goes from point A to point B, and that's sort of the thinking behind behind an outline. That's the idea of an outline, right? But something like a map can show that, it goes from point A to point B, but C also feeds back on point A. D is part of B, but also part of C. That kind of thing. And that kind of graphicalness, or graphicality, if you prefer, is something that I think appeals to a lot of people and makes it really easy to understand the relationships between things. And if you are that kind of person, if you're that kind of thinker particularly, I think this is a really great way to do it. One of the things that's cool about bubble.us is that so you make the picture, right? You make this picture. They have some tools. It's very easy to use. But once you've made that picture, you can tell it to turn it into kind of an outline, which is what this is here. This is their function of turning it into an outline. So you can see that it's kind of nested. So it's a little bit of a different way of thinking about an outline than sort of a traditional old school, American K-12 idea of an outline. And you can kind of see, you can see like this right here, this white box that says relationships. You can see that even though this was connected to social networks, this light blue box was connected to this, it was also connected to the relationships box. So this is a way of making an outline that's a little bit more iterative, a little less linear, a little bit easier to kind of be global with. And if you're trying to track something complicated, like what hopefully I'll be doing in my dissertation, or if you're a sciences type person where there's a lot of different variables going on and they might be interacting with each other in all sorts of ways like that, this way of doing an outline and this way of doing a map might be really helpful for you, and certainly helpful for your readers. Again, I think one of the great things about this is that you can put it in a paper as a figure, and that's something that's really great. Okay, and so I know that was sort of a short section on maps, but are there any questions about maps before we talk about before we talk about Scrivener?
Yes, Andrew, I'll jump in. And there was a great question from Peggy Simingson, and she was wondering, how long did it take you to make the map that you just showed us? It looked very intricate and very detailed. About how long did it take you to do that?
Yeah, well, I think if I had been going from zero, like starting from nothing and making this, it probably would have taken a long time. But I've been thinking about this for a couple of months, so this actually probably took about maybe 10 minutes. But if that question is actually about like the ease of using the tools at bubble.us, it's really easy to use. It's not like, I know I'm going to spend a lot of this presentation kind of complaining about Word, because I think Word does some things really well and a lot of stuff not very well at all. And one of the things that Word does very badly, I think, is drawing. And if I had tried to do this on Word, it would have taken me probably the better part of an hour, maybe more. And Bubble makes it really easy. So I think, if that's a question about concepts and thinking about connections, this is a representation of work that I've been thinking a lot about over the last, couple of months. But in terms of just physically doing it, very short. It's really easy to use.
Excellent. And I think that might be what our our participants were looking for, as we all have different comfort levels with technology, and knowing and understanding that something is pretty easy to use and relatively quick to learn is really beneficial. So thank you very much for sharing that wonderful resource.
Yeah, that is really, that's like a click and drag kind of thing. It's really easy to use. So I recommend it very much.
Excellent. All right, we're looking forward to the next part of your presentation.
Okay, cool. So before I get too far into this, I should say that, so I'm going to talk about a program called Scrivener, which is made by, or put out by a small little kind of indie computing firm called Literature and Latte. And I don't work for them. They haven't paid me anything. I haven't gotten anything free that anybody else couldn't get free. And I'm just a satisfied user. So just get that out of the way so nobody thinks I'm a shill. So Word, I love you, but you're getting me down. I do like Word. I use Word for a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of things that I wish Word could do better, or they could kind of be kept under one roof. I would really like that if it could be. But what Word can do, I mean, we're all familiar with it, right? So you can write on Word, and you can write on Word. This would have made a better joke if the animations that I'd put through had come through the Blackboard here. But anyway, but one of the great things that Word can do is interface with like Zotero, EndNote, all of those kinds of reference management programs. I don't use those because I've found that they make too many mistakes, and I try to be very meticulous with my referencing stuff, so I don't use those. But I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people are very happy with them. And Word, if you want to get the most out of EndNote or Zotero, or some of those other types of applications, then Word is really your best bet. But Word can't do a bunch of other stuff. Word can't keep track of your research for you. You have to go from point A to point B. And it really is, I mean, you know, it's a word processor. So it's like, at this point, it's like a really big, really complicated kind of smart typewriter. But if you couldn't do it on a typewriter, you know, it's not really Word's thing. That's not really what Word is meant to do. And I think it does what it's designed to do pretty well. But if you ever wanted to do something else, like if you want to draw on it, that's not something it's really designed to do, and that's really hard. And this program here, so what Word can't do, keeping track of research, allowing you to work in a way that is not linear, but still cobbled together in a way that ends up looking linear, and creating an environment where you can just kind of open one program and do everything you need to do. Word doesn't do that. Word can't do that for you. But Scrivener can. Scrivener can do almost everything that Word can do, and then a little bit more. What Scrivener can't do, by the way, is things like drawing, or, you know, making pretty things. That's not what Scrivener does. Scrivener is about writing and about research, and it's a program that was developed, I think, initially for novelists. I learned about it from a journalist friend of mine. So it has all these great tools for fiction writing, which if you do any of it on the side is nice. But if you're a qualitative researcher, for example, it has a little like a name generator thing. So if you need to come up with pseudonyms and stuff, it has that, which is kind of nifty. But I mean, you know, it doesn't really matter. You can do that in a phone book too. Although, who has phone books anymore? Anyway, so Scrivener can do a lot of stuff, and I'm going to show you some of that stuff here coming up. Okay. So one of the things that I really like about Scrivener is that these are all screenshots from a project that I'm working on here, and this is the PC version. And there's obviously also a Mac version, but I don't have a Mac. So what you can do with Scrivener is, one of the things it does is allow you to keep your research organized. So you save them as projects. You save anything you're doing as a project, and that project you can import PDFs. You can see here there's a big list of PDFs down this side of the screen right here, and then it allows you to visualize them here. What's nice about that is you import all of these PDFs, which is something that I think we're probably all familiar with from academic writing. You have all these journal articles or all these things like that, and then, you know, before I started using this, they were just sort of sitting in a folder. They were nicely organized, but they were sort of elsewhere. But in Scrivener, they're all in one place. And what's nice also about this is that you can see these, they look kind of like note cards, these things. You can write little summaries of each thing on it. So, you know, you can see one screen, you can see all of the PDFs you have related to a project, and little, you know, reminders of why you thought that those things would be useful for your project. So you can see that when you get into writing, this is something that, you know, again, it sort of just takes a little bit of, takes a little hassle away from you. I know a lot of people make spreadsheets and things like that with this information, and that's one way to do it too. But again, that's just another program that you have to have running at the same time, and Scrivener lets you do that all at the same time here. And similarly, since we were already talking about that sort of nonlinear stuff, this is something else that Scrivener can do. So I'm calling this drafting demystified. But you can have multiple small documents. They're not really documents, but, you know, small documents in your project here, and then you can arrange them with these cards. So if you have like an introduction section, obviously that would go first and conclusion would go last. But if you write the kind of writing you do is work that involves, you know, sections that don't necessarily go in a prescribed order. Again, I'm thinking a lot of qualitative research in the social sciences is not as rigidly kind of locked into a set way of presenting research, the way that some other research is and in some other disciplines is. So if you have that flexibility to kind of move things around, you can do that. So you move those sections around here on this screen, and then you can see them all in that flow, and to combine them for you in a single flow on a different screen, so that you can see if it really works to have a section on, I don't know, whatever, on like, you know, for the work I do, the work I do would have, like, you know, a section on what the school is like, followed by a section of what the people in the school are like. Or maybe it's better to go people first and then the actual school second, and then you can kind of mess with those things and see what works for you. You don't have to start on page 1 and go to page 10. You can start on page 8. You know, and again, you can sort of see this is something that would be really useful if you were a fiction writer, which is what this was, or a journalist, which is what this was developed for. So again, so convenience is really important, and I think, you know, anytime you can save yourself just even a second, you know, that adds up over the time you have to write a dissertation or an article, for sure. And you can see here, right, everything that you have for a project, this is all right in one place. It's all in the same screen right next to where you're writing. You don't have to click back and forth. You don't have to do, you know, Alt-Tab or whatever to get to whatever the other screen is. It's all just right there. And the two arrows here that are right there, that's in the corner of every Scrivener screen and allows you to go back to whatever you just did. It works just like a back button on a browser. But if the last thing you had open was a PDF and the other thing you have is what you're actually writing, you can go back and forth really easily, again, without having to switch applications with an Alt-Tab or you know, however else you might do that. So I think that's been very valuable for me. And then the thing I like best about Scrivener, the thing that I'm most excited about, and the reason that I bought it, is that, so this is a screenshot here is of the writing screen, the actual writing thing, right? And it can look like this, which is basically like what Word looks like, right? It looks like a regular screen. Or you can put all of that stuff away. And it's actually really hard to take a screenshot of this. I tried taking a regular picture of it, but that really didn't work either. But what it does is it's got a button that takes everything away, and I know Word has a full screen button as well, but it's not as nice. So if you're somebody who maybe likes to avoid clutter, I like to avoid clutter. Having other stuff on the screen, if I'm really trying to focus on writing and really trying to concentrate, can be distracting and sort of move me away from what I would consider to be my optimal writing mindset. And you can get rid of all that stuff, which is this is the reason I bought Scrivener, because I saw that and I was like really excited about that. Oh, let's I'm gonna go back to where I was there. Okay, that was strange. Anyway, so to sum up here, so Scrivener, it's very convenient. It helps you get organized. It's got this Zen-like interface where you can make it all disappear and just focus on putting words down. And you can export it to Word. So even if, you know, most people don't have this program, right? But everybody has Word, and it will export as PDF, it will export as Word, it will export as all different kinds of things for people that you might be collaborating with, and for you to do, you know, other kind of tweaky things. It's not great if you need to be linear, if you are, you know, need for however you define need, if need for you is something that you feel yourself, or if the people that you're collaborating with needed to be linear for whatever reason. If you like to keep things separate, which I know some people do, you like to have, you know, you like to work with your, you know, your Evernote or whatever, you like to have that, and then you like to have where you're writing be something else. If you like that, then, you know, you don't want it to be together. And unfortunately, if you're a humanities kind of person, and you use footnotes or endnotes rather than parenthetical referencing, I don't think Scrivener can do that. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think it can. So if you're a literary critic or something like that, or, you know, film studies or something, you probably doesn't work so well, or history, which is what my undergrad is in. But if you do other kinds of citations, it works really well. And they do have a free trial you can download that's for 30 non-consecutive days. I actually had that trial running for about 3 months before I bought it. So it's a great program, and it could help you. It's helped me a lot. And okay, so I'll take some. I've been seeing a lot of chatter happening here with questions about this while I was talking here. So what do you got?
excellent. This looks like such a useful tool. Thank you for this demonstration. One of the questions from JMADRECKI, I apologize, I'm not quite sure how to read that, is wondering if you found this tool more helpful than anything else that you have tried in regard to organizing your manuscript.
Yes, I think so. I tried a bunch of different stuff. We had a little presentation about Zotero. Some of the developers came in to our university and talked to us about that. So I tried that. It was the first one I tried, and it made too many mistakes, and I didn't like that. I tried EndNote, and it also made too many mistakes. I didn't like that either. and I spent a lot of time with Evernote. I think Evernote is actually a really great product. And it certainly, it has that like multiple device sync thing, which is really great. I think Scrivener doesn't have that kind of capability, so you can't do that with Scrivener, where like, you take notes on your iPad or whatever and then find it later on your, sync it to the cloud or whatever. I don't think it has that capability, although I wouldn't be surprised if that's probably coming, because they update it all the time, and those updates are free if you bought the license. So for me, it's been the best one that I found. But this is, again, these kinds of products, right? I mean, it's like the rest of the writing process. You just got to find the one that works for you. And I tell everybody that I meet about this one because they're kind of small and I think they don't have a whole lot of market share. I think they should have more. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it tonight. But there are a lot of great products like this, and I think the main thing is just finding something that works for you and find something that helps you stay organized in the way that you like to be organized. Because I think Scrivener has a very specific way of being organized that is going to work works really well for me and might work for you, but might not work for you. And just Evernote's like that too. Right, it's kind of idiosyncratic. So if you're into the way that Evernote does it, it's going to be great. If you kind of can't get into it, then it's not. And Scrivener's like that too.
Okay, excellent. It sounds wonderful that you were able to do some trial and error with multiple products and found this one to be the most useful. That saves everybody else some time. Thank you. Okay, the next question came from Sherry Lee. You had mentioned about being able to import PDF. Is there anything within this program that allows you to manipulate a PDF? Is there something within that function to help you with the writing?
Manipulate PDFs, like change the actual. I guess I'm not sure what that means.
I think what she was meaning was, can you actually write on the PDF then and possibly highlight? Oh,
yeah, okay, I see. I don't think so. But you can. I mean, like I use an app on my iPad called GoodNotes, and or Goodreader, I think it is. And that's like a highlighting, circling note kind of app for PDFs, and you can export those. I mean, it'll take in the PDFs however you send it to the program. So you can't do that work inside the program. But if you have stuff that you've done that in another program and you send it to Scrivener, it'll import it that way. So that stuff will be kept, which is probably not really answering that question. I'm not sure. Yeah. So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, so it's not all in one in that sense where like you could do absolutely everything. I kind of feel like there's a lot of money to be made by somebody making a good academic writing program that will do absolutely everything we need, because I think we're very concrete about the things that we as a community need. But I guess nobody cares yet. I don't know.
Hey, you might be onto something there, Andrew. It's a great idea. And Sherry just mentioned in the chat box that yes, that did answer her question. So thank you. Dr. Albers had a wonderful question. She was wondering, are there any collaboration features within this program? For example, like Google Docs, where we can get on there at different times, multiple people manipulate it, collaborate together?
Yeah, that's or probably like track changes and those kinds of things too. I don't think so. I think if you want, this is, and again, right, it's developed for fiction writers and like screenwriters and stuff, and I think those people work alone most of the time. So in that sense, it's not totally ideal for academics because we are very collaborative, or at least we should be, I think. So if you're somebody who's writing really in a team, this could help you individually, but then you'd have to export it to whatever other format everybody else was using, and then re-import it and then export it and then do that kind of stuff. So yeah, for multiple author stuff, I don't know, probably not that great. But for single author stuff, if you're just doing that stereotypical academic thing of being alone in a garret, with shivering with no heat and just a candle for light, it's perfect.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as you mentioned, there's not one magic key out there at this point in time. One last question for you, Andrew, is does this have the ability, perhaps Tuba was wondering, to help you locate themes or possibly to organize your codes within your different documents and possibly your transcriptions, those types of data?
Yeah, it is searchable, and I don't know if maybe they're thinking about like DevonThink or those kinds of programs too, but it is searchable and you can tag stuff, and I think you can search for text, but it has to be, there's two kinds of PDFs. There's the ones that are searchable PDFs, and then there are ones that are just like pictures of things, the ones that are actual PDFs, those are searchable. The ones that are like just pictures of a page are not searchable, but it does have that functionality. It does have that work. Yeah.
Wonderful. That is good to know. Thank you very much. And I will go ahead and pass it off. Thank you so much for answering all of our questions and to furthering our information about Scrivener.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. Well, so the final section of the presentation tonight is about actually writing. Actually getting there. So you've got all your ideas in order. You found a creation tool that works for you that you're happy with, and now you actually got to write some things. And I think what I'm saying here is that I think that there's two key elements of scholarship, and it's creation and dissemination. And I think we have absolutely no trouble at all creating stuff. I think scholars are great at finding, figuring out where knowledge needs to be built, building that knowledge. But when we get to the part where we have to tell other people about it, even other people who are other scholars, I think that's where we kind of fall down a little bit. And that's what this last section is about. So I'm going to kind of pick on literary criticism here a little bit. So I'm sorry to anybody out there who is, a Foucault or a Levi-Strauss kind of person out there. But what I have here on this slide here, there's a internet prize for bad academic writing, and these are some of the winners from this year. And so I've not cited the authors because I don't want anybody to be sad, although I'm sure they're aware that they've won these prizes. But I think that these are good examples of the kind of writing that's really hard and sort of hard for people to understand, hard for people even who are educated in the area to understand. It's just opaque. It's not good writing. So I'm going to read the bottom one here just because it's a crazy thing. And it goes like this: if for a while the ruse of desire is calculable for the uses of disciplines, soon the repetition of guilt, justification, pseudoscientific theories, superstition, spurious authorities, and classifications can be seen as the desperate effort to normalize formally the disturbance of a discourse of splitting that violates the rational, enlightened claims of its enunciatory modality. And I just want to point out that that's all one sentence, which is insane. Same deal with the one above it, also one sentence. So there's lots of mechanical things that could maybe improve this writing, but I want to kind of talk about improving the spirit of this kind of writing. Okay. And so I say we need to make art as scholars. That's the thing. The writing needs to be art, but that doesn't mean flowery. It doesn't mean evocative. It certainly doesn't mean fictional. But it does mean that it does mean some things to me. I think that art is elegant and accessible and purposeful. So finding a way to, and elegant for me is about brevity, not, spareness, but brevity, just sort of kind of trying to boil it down to what you really want to say. It needs to be accessible to people who know what you're talking about. So I'm not talking about writing as though you're doing like an op-ed, because that's something we can all do, I think, pretty easily. And that's one way of writing, but you don't want to try to, write an op-ed for, the journal Nature or something like that, right? It's got to be accessible to the audience that you intend it for, but that still means that it has to be accessible to them. People shouldn't, educated people shouldn't be scratching their heads when they read the stuff that you've written if they're in your field and should know what's going on. And then purposeful, finally, and what I call the tyranny of academic default, which is this idea that we all have to write in this very dry, very boring, not elegant, inaccessible way, and that the less elegant and the less accessible you're being, the more likely you are to be a genius. I think there's a lot of that going on, and while certainly we want everyone to understand that we are all geniuses, we don't want to write in such a way that forces people to assume we must be geniuses because they can't understand what we're talking about, So if that's what art is, how do you make art? So if you want to write, you have to read. You have to read. And there's really no way around it. And we've done a lot of reading because we're all probably pretty bookish people. But you have to read, and you have to read good writing. If you read bad writing, you're going to be a bad writer, even if you spend all your time reading. And that's the graduate school trap. The graduate school trap is spending all your time reading journals in your area and not reading anything else. And as a result, that's how you end up with every journal article sounding the same, because if that's all everybody in the area who reads the journal reads, then everyone's going to write that way. So I think one of the best pieces of advice I got, like in the first week when I started my PhD program, was try to read a novel a month, and try to get them to be good novels. And I've tried to do that. Maybe not always a novel a month, but I've tried to read a lot of good books. And it's hard to find the time. Certainly, I know that we're all pressed. It's hard to find the time to do that kind of reading. But aside from being good for your soul, because it's something that isn't the work that you're doing all the time, I think it's something that's really good just for your style too, because you get to see other ways that people are approaching the craft, and the ways that people write novels is not that much different from the way that we write our academic stuff, or it shouldn't be, or it doesn't have to be. So, and with that, of course, also what we've been talking about all along, process is our friend, and time is, but doesn't have to be, our our collective enemy. So, and I can see I'm kind of running out of time, so I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit quick. But still, you got to read strategically if you're going to read more. So if you don't have a favorite author, you should get one. And if you haven't read a novel this year, do it. The internet has lots of great writing on it. Actually, there's a lot of great periodicals out there and a lot of great bloggers. If you don't have time to write a novel, read some political thought, because at least then you'll be, it's just outside the box a little bit. And if you're only reading in your area, you should stop doing that and read some other types of journals too. Anthropology and film studies are great. Those guys write really well, and in a way that's really different from the way a lot of us write. And what we've been talking about all night, this is all sort of summary stuff, right? You have to have a habit of process. Whatever that process is, that's a habit, right? And the whole point of a process is to make it so that everything goes smoother and faster for you. So if I have this little thing down here, right? If you take 6 drafts to get something out the door, and each draft takes 5 days, your process lasts 30 days. You got to be careful about that, right? So if your process, you need to make your process work for you. You need to make an arrangement and find a way of writing that works for you, and not having you work for your process, basically, right? So I have here, I'm going to end here with some what I think is really good academic writing. Darwin is great. And I think, actually, I don't have time to read this. So Darwin is really great. This is from Origin of Species. If you haven't read Origin of Species, even if you're not a biologist, you should read it anyway. It's really elegantly, beautifully written. It's a really good one. And I think this last sentence here, there is grandeur in this view of life with its several powers, having been originally breathed into a few forms or into this one. That clause there, that's great. We should all be writing like that, I got Einstein too, because it's not just we pick on science a lot. I think those of us who aren't in science for being kind of opaque, but it doesn't have to be. And Einstein was a great writer too. This is from one of his relativity papers that's very short. Those are, they're like 5 pages long, but they're really beautifully written. And even though the math can get a little bit thorny, if you're not a math person, still it is still accessible. You can tell people are going to be able to understand what he writes. And Geertz is one of my favorites. He's an anthropologist. And I think just this final sentence in this excerpt here, for them and to agree to ourselves, we were non-persons, specters, invisible men. You really understand what he's talking about there, right? I mean, it's really, really nice writing, evocative writing that says a whole lot with not a lot of words, and that's art, as far as I'm concerned. So finally, just for the end here, academic writing can be a grind, but only if you treat it that way. It's a real privilege to do this. I think a lot of us know that. That we're if we get jobs as being faculty members, we're going to be paid for the rest of our lives to be curious, and that's an enormous privilege. And I think part of that goes with writing. You just got to be aware that writing is supposed to be fun, and keep it fun, and it will be fun. And if you get a good process, it will be fun. And finding a process that works is really most of what we're talking about. Whatever the process is for you, that's what you got to do. And yeah, just that last thing, right? We want to have fun. That's the whole point, right? We decided not to be wage slaves tied to a desk in a glass and steel building because we wanted to something more. We wanted knowledge. We were interested in the world and the way that it goes, and we thought it was going to be fun. And it's easy to forget that it is fun, but it is. So you got to find a way to find that joy and that happiness and that fun in the work that we do. And if you can find it, you'll be in pretty good shape, I think. So thank you very much. Send me an email. I'm alafave@usc.edu. You can follow me on Twitter @Andrew_LaFave. And it's been a real pleasure talking to you guys tonight. And thank you very much for having me. And if there's any more, we don't have a lot of time, but if there's any more questions, we can do that too, I think.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, but I'm sure they'll be happy to email you or just tweet you with their questions. So thank you very much, everyone, for your audience here tonight, being an audience and asking your questions. And if you'd like to write something in the chat area to just put in some of the comments of things that you've learned, or you'd like to say something to Andrew about his presentation. We also saw that a number of you has joined us after the start of the seminar, so if you could write just where you are watching the seminar from, that would be great. So as part of the Global Conversations in Doctoral Preparation, we would also like to ask you to participate in a 15-minute online interview as part of the GCDP research survey, research study. So if you'd like to participate in this research study, please type your name and email address in the chat box, and we will be getting in touch with you. Also, if you could, we would appreciate it if you could take our survey. The link is on the slide, and it can also be found on our website. This series of GCDP web seminars is the result of the hard work of a team of doctoral students from all over the world who are working together to create global conversations among like-minded people. And I'd also like to alert you to the upcoming web seminars for the fall season. Next month, November 2nd, we have Dr. Raul A. Mora from Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana, who will speak on dissertating across the mouth, survival skills for international students and their families. We also have the Global Conversations and Literacy Research web seminars, and upcoming on October 12th, which is not too far from now, Dr. Richard Beach from the University of Minnesota will be speaking on digital writing. So we hope that you put these dates on your calendar. As we wrap up this evening's seminar, please take a moment to follow us on Facebook, our WordPress site, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All the links can be found on our WordPress site. And please feel free to share this information with your friends and colleagues. We really appreciate everyone for coming here tonight, and we really had a great time with your presence and participation. We look forward to having you next time. Good night, and see you soon.